Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and the New York Islanders. Man, it's been a rough season for my New York Islanders. The Islanders have been one of the worst teams in the league this season. They currently, if you look at terms of playoff records record against playoff teams, the Islanders have the second worst in the NHL, and the only team behind them, the Arizona Coyotes. So the Islanders are going to be having an interesting dilemma at this year's deadline. I think Lou Lamoriello at some point here is going to have to sell into the idea that the Islanders will be selling at this year's deadline. And there's plenty of guys that are pending free agents, a couple of guys that just to shed some salary the Islanders could move. There's a lot the Islanders can do here. So we'll be looking at some of those rumors that the Islanders have been linked to today. So the first one we're starting off with is goaltending. And Semyon Varlamov still has 1 year left on his contract, but I think the Islanders will look to move on from Varley. I think Varlamov has had an incredibly terrible down season, and I think the Islanders, unfortunately, here are going to have to sell low on Varley. I think the Islanders are going to look to move some cap space. They have some goalies in the system, guys like Ken Appleby. Jakub Skarik is really the guy I'm looking at, probably to replace Varlamov. He's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than Varley. So the Islanders would bring up Skarik, and probably, then you have Jakub Skarik and Ilya Sorokin to start next season. I could see Schneider finishing this season for the Islanders. He's been on the bench, on the taxi squad for a lot of the season. So I could see that just kind of playing its way out the rest of the year. Or the Islanders decide to bring up Skarik once Varlamov's traded. And that way, oh god, that patch is really not looking good. Maybe they decide to get Skarik some NHL experience here at the end of the year when there's meaningful games, meaningless games for the Islanders. And that way they give Ilya a little bit of a break down the stretch. But there's been a lot of teams that have been linked to Varlamov. So the first one here is from Andrew Gross. There have been rumblings of the Oilers being linked to Semyon Varlamov. That's no real surprise. The Oilers have been kind of in that conversation really since December, even last month in January. I think they were keeping tabs on Varlamov, and I think there could be a fit there. I think there's definitely reason to believe that that is out there. This is also from Jason Gregor. I've heard some rumblings of goalie Semyon Varlamov linked to Edmonton again, and that's from Isles reporter Andrew Gross. The Golden Knights are a team that have shown interest in Semyon Varlamov, and that was from David Pajnoda. Again, with Robin Leonard out for the rest of the regular season, maybe they look to grab Varley to go behind Laurent Brossoit. So that's the latest on Varley. I think the Islanders could actually get a pretty good market for Varlamov. I think they could build that up with teams like the Golden Knights and the Oilers maybe being in the chase for him. Even the Colorado Avalanche, maybe does he make a return to Colorado here? May seem like a little bit of a stretch, but there could be something there. Looking at Zdeno Chara, he just really broke a record in NHL history. The most games played as an NHL defenseman. It sounds like he is on the way out for the Islanders. He's had a really tough season. I think the Islanders are going to have a harder time creating a market for Big Z. It's really you're buying the name on the back of the jersey, but he has not been good for the Islanders. If you watch any of his hockey this season, yes, he could drop the gloves and fight and lay a couple big hits here and there, but he can't catch these guys. These guys are all skating faster than him. Kind of showing the Bruins were kind of right with what they thought of him a couple years back when they let him go. We saw that again with Washington last year, and the Islanders this year, unfortunately. And Big Z has definitely lost a step. This is from James Nichols. Zdeno Chara and Andy Green may generate some interest for teams looking to add depth. I go back to teams like the Nashville Predators, who don't want to necessarily give up high-end draft picks and prospects, but enough to where they're making their team a little bit better. And just the sentiment in the locker room, like, all right, we're helping you guys out. We're helping the boys out, trying to add some depth. But that's really, again, I just think teams are going to look at other options, like Sherratt, even a guy like Labushkin from Arizona, those guys are going to get traded before teams really look at Andy Green and Chara. Those are going to be kind of last-minute trades, I think, on deadline day, but they'll be out there. Teams around the league have begun to call on Islanders defenseman Chara from Pierre LeBrun, so maybe there are teams out there really interested in Chara. But again, the Islanders had a really down season, and a lot of these guys the Islanders are trying to sell, they're kind of going to be selling them for lower value. Also from James Nichols, the Islanders will undoubtedly listen on players like Kyle Palmieri and Josh Bailey, and that's going to segment us to something else a little bit later here. But Kyle Palmieri, again, really has not done well with the Islanders, which just is so infuriating, but at the same time, it is what it is, and he grew up in Smithtown on Long Island. Excuse me, actually, I think he was born in Smithtown and then moved to New Jersey. So that's kind of frustrating, but again, it doesn't always work out the way you want it to. Obviously, he was part of Lou when he was with the Devils back in the day, and it just hasn't seemed to have stick. This is from Kevin Kurz. There is not expected to be much of a trade market for Islanders forward Kyle Palmieri again. I think teams will take the swing on him, but he's got that big contract. He's not a rental. The Islanders are going to be looked to retain some of that salary if they want the price that they're probably looking for, and I just don't think Lou would be willing to do that. And that's, again, leading us into the Josh Bailey situation, because Josh Bailey is a guy that is going to be definitely drawing some interest from teams, and we're going to get there. But the first one we have to get to, who, again, I think could be a very underrated guy to bring in at the deadline, is Cal Clutterbuck. This is from James Nichols again. There's a good chance that the Islanders trade Cal Clutterbuck at the deadline. I think Clutterbuck is a guy that a lot of teams would like to add as a good forechecker that's definitely good at laying the boom. He's pretty much been the hits leader in the NHL for, at the top 10 at the very least each season since he's been an Islander. Now, there are some rumors the Islanders are more lenient with what they consider a hit during the games at the Islanders' home stat guy for that, but whatever. It is what it is. It's still going to be in that. He still plays that game. And per a source here from James Nichols, there's a good chance Clutterbuck is moved. Isles can get a third for him with 50% retention because he has the rest of his contract ending this year. It would take a hefty offer to get Varlamov or Mayfield. The Islanders will listen on Bailey and Palmieri, but unlikely to get much. And again, I'm interested to hear about Mayfield. That's one I haven't heard much about. Now, this goes to Adrian Dater. Joe Sakic's definitely been working the phones. The Colorado Avalanche are a team that is looking at Cal Clutterbuck, so that's kind of interesting. But I definitely see a fit there. They've been tied to a guy like Jonas Donskoy, maybe a reuniting of him from the Seattle Kraken, who they lost in the expansion draft. So that would definitely be interesting. But then that leads us kind of to the bigger point today, which is the longest tenured Islander, Josh Bailey. Now, it's to the point where Josh Bailey, I don't think he's in this thing back here, but he was around on the Islanders throughout this tenure that I have in my poster back here. That's how long he's been an Islander. He's raised a family here. He's gotten married on Long Island. He has a lot of ties to Long Island, and there's been rumors that he may be on his way out. So this is from the fourth period. The Minnesota Wild are believed to have had a conversation about Josh Bailey with the Islanders. Nothing is imminent at the moment. Again, Josh Bailey just signed a contract. He is with the Islanders. He's making, I think, $6 million or $5 million per year. So that's a guy, if you're going to acquire him, it's more of a long-term gain. And for the Minnesota Wild, they may be willing to give up more assets because he isn't a rental. He's a guy that could be there longer term. He can play center as well if you're looking to shake up the lines, which I think is an added bonus. But he's more of a winger. The Minnesota Wild are among the teams with interest in Josh Bailey, and that's also from David Pagnotta. So more notoriety to the idea of Josh Bailey maybe going to the Minnesota Wild. Definitely an interesting development here over the next couple weeks. Cal Clutterbuck may be going on his way out to Colorado. I think there's going to be a lot of rumblings about some of these guys on the Islanders because, quite frankly, The Islanders need a reset here, and specifically on the forward front. You could definitely clear some cap space here if you move a Josh Bailey, a Cal Clutterbuck, even a Kyle Palmieri. You have guys that are coming up in your system that can take those spots. You're looking at guys like, Oliver Wahlstrom, Kiefer Bellows, who's been actually very underratedly good for the Islanders this season. Eventually, a guy like Arttu Räty. You have young wingers that can come into the system and kind of take over those spots for the Islanders and maybe clear some cap space in order for them to make other moves and to bring in other guys. And the thing is, for the Islanders still have the notoriety as a team that is pretty good. Like, they've got a good organization with Lou and Barry Trotz. So I could see the Islanders here being still players in free agency this summer if they move out enough cap in order to still contend as soon as next year. I don't think the Islanders are that far off. I think it's just going to take some changes because the Islanders have been figured out to an extent. I think a lot of teams have figured out the scheme against the Islanders to employ on them. And to be honest, the Islanders kind of invested a lot of money and assets in older players like Zach Parise, like Zdeno Chara, like even Semyon Varlamov, Kyle Palmieri. Those are all older players, even Josh Bailey for that matter, right? So I think the Islanders are going to look to get younger, faster, and more skilled. And that's going to be a little bit of a reset for the brass for the Islanders, like Lou and Barry. But I think that's the ultimate key to success for the Islanders going into next season. So guys, that is it for today's video. Comment down below. What do you think of Josh Bailey maybe getting traded? I know a lot of Islanders fans are it's a polarizing subject with Josh Bailey. He has his own chant at the Islanders games, but then he also leaves you wanting so much more. There are the Pittsburgh goals, the goals in big games back in the day, and then there's also the times where you're just like, he had an open net and he just missed, or he just passed it, or he's just that kind of frustrating player. But guys, let me know what you think down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.